Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Well, do you remember the old song by Harry Belafonte, the Banana Boat song? About the guys cutting down bananas and selling the bananas and getting the cost figured out and everything else. Well, let me tell you something. If you're a fan of bananas and other particular fruits, by October the 1st, they may start to become, well, sort of disappearing. And the reason is that there is an impending strike from the International Longshoremen's Union. That's about 45,000 workers on the East Coast and the Gulf Port area. Now that's a whole bunch of different locations all around the East Coast and into the Gulf of Mexico. They handle about half the stuff that comes into the United States from around the world. Most of these include things like fruits. Yep, all kinds of fruits and grapes. Hey, how about plywood people used to build? Yep, all that's imported. It comes in and it could stop if a strike happens on October the 1st. Now, what do the longshoremen want? Well, they want a pay raise of 70%. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Are they going to get it? I don't know. But a big pay raise like that, or frankly any pay raise in a very large amount of money, could ultimately create more inflation in the United States. Why? Well, if products cost more to have imported and more to unloaded, those costs are going to be passed along to you and me. That's what we're looking at. Longshoremen are saying, hey, inflation in America has gone bad. We want our raise. And they're going to say, we're going to strike if we don't get it. So, could that very well happen? The answer is yes. Longshoremen on the West Coast went on strike and they got a 32% raise. So, everything is going up and inflation will continue, folks, and you'll be paying more. Now, if you're a fan of bananas, well, the Dole Company and the banana growers, well, they bring in bananas and you may not see bananas. And if you do see them, they're going to cost you a boatload. A lot more money for all the fruits and vegetables and things that are imported. And if it's on strike, you may see the grocery shelves looking pretty doggone bare. It's what could happen if the longshoremen do not agree to a new contract, wanting a whole lot more money. And will they get it? I have no idea. Just telling you what you could expect. So if the shelves dry up and there's nothing there, and you can't build anything because there's no plywood, it's all based on imports. And the longshoremen right now control the radio, as they say. That's what's happening. Let's see what happens. We will know sooner or later because October is drawing pretty doggone close, and it could end up in a very bad situation. That's all I have for you for right now. See ya. Well, the strike is on, right? The longshoremen, the Teamsters, as you call them, are striking everywhere from Maine clear down to Texas. I mean, that's basically 2/3 of the United States when you think about it. And around half of the stuff that comes into the United States or other countries comes through ports in those areas. Some very big things when you think about it. Obviously, most people think about, well, bananas, okay. Yeah, bananas come into those places, but other things too. You got car parts, you got various French wines. If you're into wines of France and Germany and those areas, that's where it comes from. And so many other things you can imagine. And it got me to thinking, gee, what else comes in from Europe? If you're one who happens to be a marksman, and I use this term kind of loosely, you're someone who enjoys the shooting sports, not trap and skeet and those kind of things. Although there's companies over there, and you got to be understanding this, who make rifles. Rifles and pistols are made in Europe. Some very nice stuff, by the way. You're getting the CZs and FNs and a lot of other brands, Benelli's. I mean, I could name stuff going here and there, even shotguns, rifles, pistols. European made, and they are very, very much sought after here in the United States. But it isn't just rifles and pistols that are made. It's the ammunition that they use in them. Well, the United States, there's companies like CCI and those folks, they make ammunition right here in the United States, and that's fine. But the professionals use stuff that's made in England from a company called Ely And then you go into Finland, Lapua, Germany, SK, RWS. I mean, all these brands I was thinking about, they are manufactured in Germany. And if this strike goes on a long time, which could cost the U.S. somewhere about $5 billion a day, it's a lot of money, folks. And all that stuff is backed up. Things on your shelves in your stores, you're not going to see anymore, at least for a while. And if you do see those things, the things you do see are going to be exorbitantly priced, which could massively increase our inflation. That's right. A strike like this could, in fact, cause massive inflation. Now, what do they want? What do the Teamsters want? Well, what I understand, they want roughly a 70% pay raise. Now, to equate that down for the average person, they want an average of a $5 an hour increase every single year for what, 7 years? Length of their contract? Well, you think about it. $5 an hour, that's $10,000 a year. Every year. For 5, 7 years, whatever they decide to do. That's an awful lot of money. But you know what? That isn't the only thing they're concerned about, folks. They're concerned about automation. They are worried that robots are going to take over their jobs, and they are fighting to make sure their contracts say no robots are allowed. That's really what this is all about, whether you like it or not. This has to do with their fear of automation because it's happening everywhere. You go into fast food restaurants, and some of them are going to robotics nowadays. And they're worried that automation is going to put them out of a job. And it very well could. They don't want it to happen, hence they're striking. So that's one of the things you need to know about. But however, one group that is not striking are the Teamsters that serve the cruise boats. Now you're going, what? You mean they're allowing the cruise boats to go on? Yes, they are. And why is that? Well, it's simple. During the COVID thing, all the cruises were shut down. And all those longshoremen working at those loading the ships up and putting everything on, all the stuff, because they got to put stuff on the boats, right? Food, all the other stuff. Well, those are the longshoremen who do that. And they were out of jobs. So they made a consolation to say, okay, the cruise ships are going to keep running because the longshoremen were out of jobs during the COVID era. Trading it off. So it's basically a specific strike just to get your attention and prevent companies from turning ship workers or longshoremen into robots. That's really what this is all about when you think about it. So now you have something maybe you didn't know about the strike. Yes, it's about money, but ultimately it's the fear of automation and how that could take those people's jobs and take them away. That's what the deal is, and now you know. Well, as you know, America is undergoing what might be the costliest strike in the history of America, with the longshoremen from Maine to, well, Texas going on strike. And it's been going on at the time I'm doing this. The strike had been going on for, 3 days when I'm recording this. But I was talking to some folks, and they said, why is this happening? Why are they doing this at this time? We've got the hurricane going on. We've got wars. We got things happening. Why would the longshoremen do something like this at this time? And why didn't the Biden administration use the Taft-Hartley Act to stop a strike for 80 days? Well, I can't explain why the Biden administration didn't do anything. Frankly, I'm puzzled by them myself. But here's the problem from the longshoremen. All of these organizations, they work on contracts. And those contracts can be 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. This happened in the airline industry because they have their unions there. This happened in the automobile industry where they have their unions there. And when they come in, they want a contract and they want huge amounts of money. And why are they getting that? Well, pretty simple. You see, they had to live through the inflation era. And if you had a contract you were working on, say back from 2018, and you lived through the COVID era, and suddenly when they dumped all that money, the printing press went stupid wild to put money into circulation, and the U.S. dollar lost 20% of its value. And it did. Whether you like it or not, it did. And they're saying, hey, we want to recoup that. And we want to build it in for the future before they get some more stupid stuff happens in the future. And that's why they come up with these ridiculous contracts that have so much more money into them, you're going, how can they get a 70% raise, a 40, 50% raise? Because they're going back from the past and going into the future. Because frankly, they don't trust what government is doing. And they don't trust the inflation situation. And that's really what we got to live with, folks. You know, we're spending more on interest now than we are Defense Department. Interest. We're borrowing money all the time. That federal budget, the federal deficit is up to what, $35 trillion? I can't even think of what a trillion is. We're getting in big financial doo-doo. I'm not sure how we're going to get out of this. I have no way of knowing. But the biggest problem is the government spends more money than they're taking in and keeps borrowing more to keep doing it over and over. And that's why the unions are doing what they're doing. It's not pretty, folks. I don't like it. But you got to ask yourself, why is government doing this and what can they do to stop it? A lot of the politicians won't tell you because it ain't pretty. Just thinking about that, not the best day I've ever had.
Coming up next.
Well, we've all heard that 10 to 12 million people have come into the United States in the last 3 or 4 years illegally on our southern border. They all come in, rush in, and frankly, there's nothing that we have done to stop them because, well, apparently the government wants to let them in. Well, here's what we have just learned. Because the Department of Homeland Security has just briefed the House Judiciary Committee with a report and said, you know, all those guys we let in? Well, 1.7 million of them apparently offer a security threat to the United States. You heard me right. They call them special interest aliens. And they're guessing right now it's about 1.7 million who could be, terrorists. Could be looking to do something bad like happened on 9/11. Remember that? Only a few people hijacked some airplanes. So what could 1.7 million people do to the United States? I don't know, and I don't want to know. But the fact of the matter is, this is where we are, America. This is what's happened. By allowing all these people in, come on in, everything's fine, for political purposes, which is what I think it was. To do that, we are admitting enemies who definitely want to do something bad to us. Majority of them from Nicaragua or China. And I'm still wondering, what are all these Chinese immigrants doing coming into the United States? And I've seen the videos. What do they want to do? Most of them are all young men. Young men coming into the United States. Why? I don't know. But I can tell you this. The Department of Homeland Security is finally admitting what's going on, saying, yeah, we let 1.7 million in and they could be dangerous. So if you wonder why people are concerned in this country, you wonder why we got security stuff going on, maybe that's going to answer the question a little bit. 1.7 million out of what, 10, 12 million? They could be dangerous, security risks. So what are we going to do about that, folks? Maybe that's something we're going to have to ask the next administration, whoever it happens to be, what do y'all plan to do about this? Before something really bad happens that goes beyond anything we saw on 9/11. Just saying.
Coming up next.
Well, let me tell you how about the way things work in Washington, D.C. Now, you've heard about the legislators are having all these folks that come to see them. They're lobbyists. And lobbyists, well, you know, they come bearing gifts sometimes. Or else they want to sponsor an event for you or help pay into your political fund so you can get yourself reelected. Well, if you're the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, well, you know, maybe you get something a little bit different because, interestingly enough, her husband, Paul Pelosi, just sold about $500,000 worth of Visa stock right before Visa was charged with a federal lawsuit by the Justice Department. Now you're saying, well, how could that possibly happen? Well, let's be honest, folks. If If you're one of the most powerful people in Washington, D.C., you know everything. And a lobbyist may not give you cash, he may not give you anything, but he may give you some information. Or someone from the Justice Department gives you a call and say, hey, a lawsuit's coming against Visa. And Nancy can say, well, I don't own any stock. My husband, he owns stock. And a little pillow talk, and she goes, hey, Paul, could be a lawsuit coming out against Visa. Do we own any Visa stock? And he says, okay, I'm going to get rid of a few hundred shares of that just before the lawsuit drops. Well, no telling how much money he made by selling about $500,000 worth of stock, but when the lawsuit was announced, Visa's stock dropped about 3%. Now, that's not a big amount of money in the grand scheme of things, because I think the price of their stock was over $200 a share. Take that back, $271 a share. So, not going to change things a whole lot unless you're somebody that has a lot of money tied up in stuff and you don't want to lose a dime. See, that's the way things work in Washington, D.C. It's the insider gets the information. Now, should members of the House and Senate be restricted from buying stocks? Well, some would say yes. And I happen to be one of those people that would tend to agree with that, saying they have no business being involved with the stock market because they can be bribed by the folks on K Street, the lobbyist. Insider information, that's how they become rich and wealthy. Just saying, my observation. Don't know what you think, but now you know I think. That's all I got for you. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, everywhere in the United States, you've been hearing stories about a school that suddenly gets a bomb threat, a killing threat. I mean, it's happened in schools around the United States, including here in the Fort Wayne area. I mean, it's happened in this area, and they post things on the internet thinking, well, they can get away with this. And then you spend a lot of time, effort, and money doing some research and finding out the IP address where it came from. And they find out it's some kid being stupid. Well, down in Florida, in Volusia County, Florida, a sheriff down there by the name of Mike Chitwood, he said, look, I've had enough of this. He said, we've had 54 threats already in this school year down in his school district where he works down in his county in Florida. And he said, I've spent over $21,000 worth of money investigating this stuff and over time I'm trying to find out where it's coming from. He said, then when I find out what it is, it's kids. And he said, you know what? He said, I've had enough of this. I have had enough. And I'm wondering, and maybe if other sheriffs, aside from Mr. Sheriff Chitwood, would take the same philosophy, because here's what he said. He said, parents, if you don't want to raise your kids, I'm going to raise your kids for you. Every time we make an arrest, your kid's photo is going to be put out there for everybody to see. And if I could do it, I'm going to perp walk your kid so that the media gets to see it and everybody else gets to see your kid, what your kid is up to. And your kid's going to be charged with a felony, especially if he tries talking about killing somebody. Yeah, he's a juvenile. He'll probably get off, be put in juvie for a while and get his wrist slapped and what have you. But you know what? That kid's going to have a record. And they can say, well, it's a youth record. We'll expunge it off there. Trust me, folks. You may think they can expunge it. It's still there. They know about it. It can be found out. People say, no, it can't. Trust me, it can. So, should our local sheriff say the same thing to parents? Hey, parents, you ain't raising your damn kid. I'm going to raise your kid for you. And if we find out that your kid's doing this, we're gonna arrest him. And we're going to put his photo out there for everybody in the media to see, and we're going to do a perp walk. Or we arrest your kid in handcuffs. But his parents aren't doing their job anymore. The kid gets on the computer and thinks he starts trolling stuff, doesn't want to go to class, doesn't want to take a test, whatever, so he goes online and creates some story that he's going to be a shooting. What these kids don't realize is they can track down their IP address. If found out exactly where it came from. Florida sheriff makes a good point, and frankly, I agree with it. It's about time. Parents don't want to raise their kids, stay on their kids, and make sure they ain't doing that kind of nonsense. Then you're going to let the sheriff come in. The sheriff is going to arrest little Bobby or little Janie, perp walk them, and let the media see it. And maybe, just maybe, some parents will say, you know, I got to watch what's going on because I don't want my kid doing that. You want your kid doing that? Just saying. Something happening down in Florida, but maybe should be happening up here too. Just a thought, just my opinion, and that's all I have for you today. So, see ya.
Coming up next.
Well, if you're a senior citizen or you're someone getting Social Security, you may be wondering, gee, I wonder how much cost of living increase I'm going to get next year. Well, that's a pretty good thought. You know, we've had it go up. Last year, I think it went up about 2.9, 3.2%. I think it's somewhere over 3%. Well, they use different numbers to figure out every year what the cost of living index is going to be for the COLAs, they call it, cost of living adjustment. And one of the things they use is called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. That's a lot of big words. Basically, they call it CPI-W. And that rose about 2%, well, actually 2.4% in August compared to a year ago. So that's last year, this year. So they're saying, well, price didn't go up that much. Well, prices are going up, folks. And with the dock workers strike going on, Teamsters, it could go up a lot. Now everybody said, well, inflation's gone down around 3%. Well, yeah, it may have. But that was because, that was after the jump of over 20%. And we haven't made that up. We never will. So what are they thinking about? Well, right now, here's the latest guess. Can't guarantee this is going to be correct because, hey, I'm just looking at the same numbers that some other folks are. But the cost of living index, they guess, is going to be somewhere around 2.5%. So whatever you're making this year, if you're on Social Security, it'll probably go up around 2.5% or thereabouts, pretty close to that amount, as compared to last year when it was up over 3% because inflation was going stupid. So now you know what's going on. So if you're one of those people that lives on Social Security, pray to God that we don't run into another inflation mess. And that happens when you put too much money chasing too few goods and you dump money into the economy and makes the dollar that you currently have worth a lot less more than it was. That's the problem. That's inflation. So now the cost of living index will go up approximately, my guess is roughly 2.5% as compared to last year. So that's just my prognostication. I can't guarantee I'm 100% correct. But if you want to get your pen out, do some scratching around and figure it out with your calculator, say, well, 2%, here's what I'm going to get. Pretty much what I think it's going to be. Just my guess right now, but I thought I'd pass that along to you. Those of you who are concerned how much money the government's going to give you. Just remember, though, the government could giveth, and the government definitely could taketh away. Just saying.
Coming up next.
Well, if you like to hear good stories, well, this ain't one of those. Because you probably haven't heard about this, but the country of Denmark, not that you care about anything happening in Denmark, but what they have done is they have instituted a new tax. Yeah, but wait till you hear what it's on. They are taxing cattle. Things like cows, sheep, pigs, things that farmers grow for food. Well, guess what? The reason they're doing is because they're saying cows, pigs, and sheep emit methane. Let's see. Cow farts, I guess that's what they're talking about. They're saying, it'd make up 32% of the methane that's being produced comes from the cows and the pigs and the sheep. And I'm going, what? Well, the government of Denmark has actually passed a law that starting in 2025, each cow that you have, they are going to charge you $43 per ton of carbon dioxide that animal produces. And in 2030, it's going to go up to $108 per ton. I don't know how they're going to measure that. I haven't figured that one out yet. But you got to understand something at cows. Cows are ruminants. That means they got more than one stomach. They got like 4 stomachs. They eat grass and hay, and they turn it into nutrients because it moves from one stomach to the other stomach. And, all right, they may give off some belching. Okay, cows belch. Big deal. Humans belch. Just keep that in mind. Humans belch, but they're saying cows belch, and they're producing all this methane and carbon dioxide. Well, the trouble is they're saying it's like 32%. No. According to the actual facts that are done by other studies, and we're supposed to believe scientific studies, are we not? It's only about 3%. But, hey, Denmark's saying, oh, no, we're doing this. I'll tell you why it's all being done. It's being done by leftists, absolute, complete, total leftists. And here's what they're doing. They're trying to say to farmers, it's going to be too expensive for you to raise cows and pigs and sheep, and everybody's going to have to become vegans. That's what this is all about. This is the leftists in Denmark are trying to put farmers out of business by charging them by carbon dioxide and belch tax from their animals. And you think that's, oh, well, that's just Denmark. It's not a big deal. Trust me, folks. If it goes off in Denmark, the leftists in the United States are going to go, whoo, that's a good idea. Hey, you know, we ought to get that done. And if ever they get in charge, and if they're in the power, look for those to say, we're going to do the same thing in the United States. We're going to charge those bad, cattle farmers and pig farmers and sheep farmers, we're going to charge them for carbon dioxide. And eventually they're going to go out of business and become vegans. That's what this is all about. Don't kid yourself. There are leftists in the world, and they want to do things that you and I are going, what? God gave us molars, gave us teeth for a reason. I think we've been eating meat for a long time. Now, it's my opinion, but if you want to go to Denmark and start raising cows and sheep and pigs, get ready to start paying a carbon dioxide tax to the tune of, well, $43 a ton. Now, 5 years, $108 a ton. Welcome to Denmark, the land of the free, the home of the brave. Yeah, really? Fat chance.
Coming up next.
Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of a company called Schwan's? Well, it used to be named Schwan's until about 2022, and they changed their name to Yellow. And it was those trucks that would come around, every week or so to your house, and you would look at the menu of meals they had. Frozen food, that's what it was. Frozen food, you got some of this, you got some of that, whatever it was, you put it in your freezer. And when you're ready to cook dinner, you just put it in the oven, cook it for the right amount of time, and bingo, you had it. They had virtually everything, and they even worked on seasons. So they get things for this winter season, Thanksgiving, whatever. Schwan's was there, and they've been around since, 72 years they've been around. The problem was things started to change. You got companies delivering you food, like, DoorDash, or you just go to anybody and you order food up and they bring it to you. And you pay the price. But then there's those companies that started up creating food for you. And they would literally send you an entire package of food, and all you had to do is put it in the oven, heat it up, it's fresh food. And, the younger folks started getting into that because they didn't want to go for the frozen stuff. They wanted things that were fresh made. And I understand that. But ultimately, business for the Schwans, or Yellow, or whatever you want to call them, started to decrease and decrease and decrease. Well, starting in November, Schwan's is going to go out of business. That's right, they're going to shut the doors. And I feel bad for the employees because I believe the guys who deliver the Schwan stuff, they own their trucks. So they're like traveling salesmen. They have their routes, the people they work with. They make kind of like independent contractors almost. They make money off of what people buy. And they get a cut of the deal, and that's how they earn their living. So they really are independent contractors in the grand scheme of things. Sort of like a paper boy is, Back in the old days, I was a paper boy, and you get up every morning at 3:30 and deliver papers, and once a month you go around to every customer and collect money and hope you get it. You get a bill from the newspaper company, and then you pay them, and whatever's left, that's yours. I did that back in the old days because, young guy, I had a motorcycle, had to make payments. That's how it was. But Schwans, are going to be going out of business very soon. The market changed, the people changed, and our taste changed. And so it is with so many things that we exist with in our world. Everything old is not new again. It changes, and so does society. Something to think about. And now yellow is going to be gone soon. Say goodbye to Schwans. So if you see a Schwan truck, you're going to go, hey, I remember them. Yep, Schwans going down to history because America changed.
Coming up next.
If you're one of those people that likes to enjoy your time, say take a trip, maybe you want to go on a boat cruise up to Alaska or go down to the Caribbean, that's perfectly fine. I've done that more than once. Or if you want to take a train trip or maybe a flight to somewhere, flying to Hawaii or flying to Tahiti or wherever you want to go, well, those are fun things to do, I suppose, if that's what you like to do. But how would you like to jump on a train and spend 48 hours on the train to go from Chicago, Illinois to Miami, Florida? Well, guess what? You can. It's called the Floridian. And what Amtrak has done is taken a couple of routes, the Capital Limited and the Silver Star, merged them together, and has created this new thing called the Floridian. Now, here's the way it works. You start in Chicago, Illinois, then you go to Cleveland, then you go to Pittsburgh. Oh, great place, I want to see Pittsburgh. Then you head down to Washington, D.C., and then to Jacksonville, Florida, Orlando, Florida, Tampa, Florida, and finally to Miami, Florida, all in 48 hours. Now, I suppose if you want to go coach, which is probably the cheapest way to go, that's going to cost you around $500 for this trip. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not sure what an airline ticket would cost to fly from Chicago to Miami, one way, which is a one-way ticket to $500. And sitting in a coach, all right, that may take you 3-4 hours, whatever it is, but you're not going to stop in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and D.C. and Jacksonville. You're going to fly from Chicago to Miami, probably a direct shot. However, train thing, well, if you want to pay the freight, which is about $1,500, you can get the scenic view because there's going to be a dining car. You can relax, just see the scenery, see everything going on, see the lakes of Cleveland. Oh, I'm sure that's probably good. And then, of course, you can see the rusted-out steel mills in Pittsburgh. That would be another sight to see as you travel. And who would not want to see Washington, D.C.? Okay? Me, I wouldn't. And, of course, going down to Jacksonville, Florida, and then you wing your way down to Orlando. I don't know what you're going to do down there as you pass through. Not much to see. It's pretty flat down there. And then you wing over to Tampa, hope there's not a hurricane going on, and finally get down to Miami, Florida after 48 hours, spending roughly $1,500. Now, if that's what you want to do for a nice trip, have at it, friends, because now it's available. And if you like to travel, you want to see stuff, that's great. I know people who've gone up and ridden a train in Canada, go across Canada, see a whole lot of scenic stuff in Canada, especially when they get to Rocky Mountains. Understand that. But would you want to go on this trip? Well, you can. All you have to do is contact the folks at Amtrak, and they can get you set up to go on the Floridian. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know how successful it's going to be. But I do want to let you know it is available. So if you're looking for some place to go for a nice trip and you don't want to drive, because driving would take you about 21 hours. If you want to go 48 hours and sitting on a railroad train, I know how you can do it. Just takes a credit card, takes a call, and pack your suitcases, and you're ready to go. Just a little travel tip I wanted to give you. Something else to break up the political news. Just thought I'd pass that along to you. And right now, that's all I got for you. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, what do you say we get off the subject and talk about something called gossip? Yes, I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to give you a little bit of gossip because this is something I've been thinking about and, frankly, talking about with some folks for a long time, and maybe you have too. It has to do with the royal family. You know, Prince Charles and his kids, namely Harry, his son. Because Harry, well, he's different than the rest of the royal family. He looks different. He's a ginger, got freckles. Nobody else in the family does. And I have always believed that it's because of a meeting, if you will, between a gentleman by the name of James Hewitt, a riding instructor of Princess Diana, and him. Because he is a ginger. And, well, that's what I thought. And a lot of people thought the same thing as I did. Well, according to a new book that has just been released by Princess Diana's hairdresser, Richard Dalton. I didn't know him. His new book is called It's All About the Hair, and he says, nuh-uh. He said, trust me, I'm a hairdresser. I know exactly what was going on because, well, women tell their hairdressers everything. And I'm thinking, do I tell my barber everything? I probably tell him a lot, I guess. Well, anyway, he said, no. She loved Charles, but she realized he didn't love her, at least as much as she loved him. And the relationship with James Hewitt, the riding instructor, did not begin until after the birth of Prince Harry. Now, why is Prince Harry a ginger? Well, if you take a look at Diana's side of the family, a whole bunch of folks on her side are gingers. Got the red hair, got the freckles, got the whole thing. And apparently Mother Nature, the DNA, and all the other stuff going on, came down when he was born, which made him look different than, well, the rest of the royal family. Hence all the rumors that went on. But no, he is not the son of James Hewitt, Prince Charles' son. Now, the royal family would know this because they probably have done DNA tests, and they know exactly who's who. Trust me, it's under the carpet, but they probably did. So, where does that stand? Well, now the book is out. Now the word is out that, yes, he is a royal like everybody else. But Diana was just nothing more than the baby machine producing the royals, not loved by Prince Charles because he had it in for Camilla was in his pocket. Now, Diana tried everything she could to get his attention. One thing I didn't even know about, she did a dance routine to Billy Joel's song, Uptown Girl, as a surprise for Prince Charles. She was wearing a satin dress and apparently not much else, and it showed a whole lot of, well, Diana. Prince went, oh, lovely, darling, that was a nice job, and obviously was not thrilled. She could not get him back. He had his love interest, and it wasn't her. So all things ended, but now we know, according to the hairdresser, Princess Diana, that, that Harry is, in fact, a royal. Just saying. Small thing for you to know, not that you would really care about it, but hey, I talk about enough other stupid stuff, you're probably going, get off the politics, dude, and do something else. Well, guess what? I have. Now you know, whether you liked it or not, I have gotten into gossip. Should I do it again? Maybe. You never know what I'm liable to say. That's all I got for you right now. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, on television, have you seen those personalities? I mean, president's son, actors, all saying, hey, go out and buy gold. Hedge against inflation. Gee, you got to have gold. And they're all saying, hey, here's this company to go to, here's that company to go to. And people are buying gold. Now, the price of gold, by the way, has shot up. I think it's selling now for over $2,600 an ounce. You want to buy gold. And people are doing that because the value of the dollar seems to be, well, not seems to be, it's actually going down. Gold, it's a commodity that's not. Gold's been traded for hundreds and hundreds of years. Well, here's something maybe you didn't know. If you happen to be a customer of Costco, got your little Costco card, believe it or not, you could buy precious metals from Costco. Now, I didn't realize that, but apparently Costco sells it online. And if you're a member of Costco, you can go online and buy gold. I'll tell you how much Costco is selling. $200 million a month of gold. You heard me right. $200 million a month of gold. But, hey, can't afford $2,600 an ounce? Costco has something just for you. Something brand new they're putting out there, just announced this, and Costco is now going to sell you platinum. That's right, platinum bars. Platinum bars, 1 ounce bars, for the mere price of $1,089.99. That's right. Now you can invest not just in gold, not just in silver, but you can go to your friendly neighborhood Costco online store and say, hey, I want to pick up some platinum while I'm at it, and drop about, probably $1,100 for 1 ounce of platinum. I'm not sure how you can sell that. Not sure if you can take it to your nearby Kroger or your Piggly Wiggly or your Publix store and give it to the cashier and say, here, I'd like to buy my groceries with this 1 ounce little ingot of platinum. I don't think you can do it with gold either, by the way. But if all things go to heck in a handbasket and that's all we have left and money is, well, like Venezuela, worthless, maybe you can start trading in your gold or your platinum or whatever else you got you're selling. Just thought I would pass that along to you. So if you're a Costco customer, now aside from buying gold online, you can buy platinum for a mere $1,089.99 for a 1 ounce bar. Man, I am thrilled with that. Now I got to figure out what to do with it. Just my thoughts on it. Well, what do you say we digress away from politics and get into economics? Well, not macroeconomics or microeconomics. It's your economics, your wallet, your purse, what you got in it, if you got anything left. Well, millions of you happen to have a very special card. I have one myself. There it is, Costco card. And for most of us, you go to Costco and you walk in, there's a greeter there, you flash your card, here's my card, you go in and you go shop. The problem starts when you check out at the checkout lady, and if she happens to take a look at the back of your card and looks at the picture, picture on the back of the card, that's what you got when you got your card, and it ain't you. And that's where the problem's got. Well, a couple of years ago, Costco in Europe decided to try out a special system, a camera system, that looked at the back number on the card, was right there, and pulled up the picture that was taken originally when the card was issued. And they look at the picture on the screen, they look at the picture of the person presenting the card, and if they match, fine. If they don't, it's a problem. Tell people you got to get your own card. Quit stealing. Because Costco makes their money off the card, the membership, not the stuff they sell. They make their money off of this thing right there, getting the card. That's their big money. And now if you want to buy a share of Costco, it's going to cost you over $900. Apparently it's doing pretty well. Last year, 6-8 months ago, it was about $800 and some. Now it's over $900 because the program, they said, works. They said, here's the deal. Nowadays, they know exactly how many people are in the store. They know how many lanes to open up for the checkout people. Too bad they don't do that at Walmart. But listen, I digress. So, here's the deal. So now, if you want to go to Costco, instead of borrowing your card from your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your friend, or whomever, you better have your own. Because now they take it, they scan the number on the back, picture comes up of the person who owns that card. The greeter at the door goes, it don't look like you. You got a problem. Now they're telling you to just go out and buy your own card. Costco makes more money. That's what's going on, folks. So now the program is working quite well. They said it's working wonderfully because the share price is over $900. But people are still going to Costco. I'm just giving you a heads up so you don't embarrass yourself or anybody else that decides to borrow your card the next time they want to go to Costco. Just something I want to pass along to you to save you some money and grief. Well, maybe. That's all I got for you right now. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, if you will allow me the ability to get away from politics for at least a moment, I want to talk about something involving sports. No, it's not football. It's not baseball. Well, it is basketball, but it's not men's basketball. It's women's basketball. Now, for a number of years, the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association, has existed. And frankly, it's been ignored by most people. Cities have WNBA teams, but frankly, those teams are supported by the regular NBA teams and have been for many, many years. Because, well, you get an NBA team, they may have 18,000, 20,000 at a game. With the WNBA, would be lucky to get 4,000 at a game, if that. Well, that all changed going into this year, because suddenly a new young lady showed up on the scene. Graduate of the University of Iowa, where she was a bona fide star. People started to watch her back in those days on television. Sold out arenas in Iowa. And people think, hey, this kid is going to be the number one draft. And she was. Because the worst team in the Women's Basketball Association was in Indianapolis, Indiana, the Fever. And she was drafted by the Fever as their number one choice. Interestingly enough, her boyfriend, who formerly was also from Iowa University, played there, was an assistant coach at the NBA Pacers. So, boyfriend, girlfriend together in Indy, okay, fine, no problem. Well, she hit the court, and the Fever at the time had a really bad record. I mean, they hadn't been into the WNBA playoffs since like 2016. They sucked. Well, this kid came along and started making things happen. Except the other players on the team, well, they weren't all together on the show. They weren't sure what to do, where to go, and, how to run the rodeo. She was making passes, doing all sorts of things, and started to make scores and assists and rebounds. Suddenly, this 21-year-old kid, 22-year-old kid, is starting to set NBA records in her first year. It wasn't one record, it was multiple records. And every game it seemed like more records were falling. And the team started to win. Well, then the Olympics came along, and there was a big furor that she was not accepted. Caitlin Clark was her name. She was not accepted into the Olympic team. And she didn't say anything about it, said, okay, fine. But during that time off, the 2 weeks she had off, she traveled around, seen her on TV, here, there, everywhere. But eventually got back to her team, and they started to come together. I don't know how, but they did. Started winning games, started moving around, started taking passes, starting to make no-look passes. Heck, it reminded me of the days of the NBA when they had a guy named Nate Archibald. They called him Tiny. Probably one of the finest basketball passers the NBA had seen. I remember him because I went to college with him, but that's another story. Well, anyway, they started to win. And the other teams and the other players, well, a level of jealousy showed up, and frankly, they were manhandling around the court. Referees let it go, and that's unfortunate. But ultimately, the team actually made the playoffs. And they had to play their first games on the road against the Connecticut Sun. It's a 3-game series, folks, when you get to that level. And the first game they lost. Second game was sort of a closeout game. You either win or go home. Well, in that game, history was made. Because in that game, according to the Nielsen ratings, 2.5 million viewers, according to Nielsen. And the peak was 3.4 million. That's never happened on cable TV. Never. Never happened with a WNBA game. Never. Now, there was another game that came after it. I think it was the Mercury versus the Lynx. That game only had 1.2 million viewers as compared to 2.5, and the peak was 2.1. Nothing near that, but here's the point. This is what I want to make. All right, the Indianapolis lost. They're out of the playoffs. Connecticut Sun is going on to play in the semifinals, and all right, fine. But let me tell you something. As of right now, I can almost guarantee you that any other games that are broadcast on regular TV or cable TV or wherever, the ratings are going to plummet. They're going to drop like a stone. Because the one thing, the one person, the one individual that was the guiding light making all this happen is sitting on the sidelines because her team lost. Now, the old saying, one monkey don't make no show. Well, in this case, this lady ain't a monkey. She's a lady. And she made the show. And she made the show so everybody wanted to tune in and see it, to the tune of over 3.4 million viewers went to their TV sets to watch. And I was one of those. Because I didn't watch WNBA, but she came along and I said, I just want to see this. Kind of got hooked on it. But now that she's gone, do I care about the WNBA and their championship? Nah, I don't care a whit. Following one player. Just telling you how I feel, and I'm guessing a lot of America feels the same way about one young lady who came into a league where she was not welcomed, set every record you could think of, and unfortunately only made the playoffs, but was eliminated shortly thereafter. Will more happen in the future league, future seasons? Let's hope so. She changed the league the way we know it. She brought eyeballs to the screen. And that, folks, is where the money is being made. Trust me. And the TV networks, they know it. Just my thought on this, just an aside. If you're not a basketball fan, well, it has to do with ratings, folks. And it has to do with somebody who can make it happen. Or as they say, she made it rain. That's all I got for you right now. See ya. Well, an announcement has just been made that everybody expected was going to happen anyway, but here's the announcement. Caitlin Clark has been named the Rookie of the Year by the WNBA. Now, you're saying, well, that's not a big deal. Well, in a way, yes, it is. Because for the last few months, there's been a massive controversy involving Ms. Clark. And they're saying that, well, she's not the best. It should have been given to somebody else, another player in Chicago. But as it turns out, there were 67 votes cast for the Rookie of the Year. Ms. Clark got 66 of them. And, well, one went to her opponent. Well, that's fine. But you have to understand something. Caitlin Clark is now out of the WNBA playoffs after, well, losing 2 games to the Connecticut Sun. Well, in that, the ratings, when she was in, playing the game in the playoffs, skyrocketing ratings. About 2 million people watched. This was during the NFL season, when the people want to watch football. People are watching her on the WNBA. Well, now that she's out, the ratings for the remainder of the teams who are in the WNBA championship have dropped about 2/3. Oh, I'm telling you, it is what it is. She's a phenom. She's a phenom in a league that frankly didn't want her, because most of them, it's a black league, for lack of a better term, and apparently it's a lesbian league, and that's unfortunate too, but hey, I don't make the rules, I don't make the situation. Just telling you what it is. And unfortunately, the referees let the other teams beat her up. And I think that needs to be looked into and really addressed by the WNBA officials and executives allowing that kind of stuff to happen. When Larry Bird entered the league, they didn't allow the other teams to beat him up, at least as best of my memory. But he was great. Magic Johnson, great. Michael Jordan, great. There are greats in all these leagues. Well, it turns out that Caitlin Clark is a phenom, a big phenom, and said about every record that you could think that can be set in the WNBA, she set it. So she ended up becoming the Rookie of the Year. And some said, well, she wasn't going to appear that way. She did. 1 vote she didn't get. And I understand that. Everybody's entitled to vote the way they want to. It's no big deal. But it has now been announced that officially the WNBA Rookie of the Year, former Iowa Hawkeye star and phenom, member of the Indianapolis Fever, is now the Rookie of the Year for the WNBA. And you know what? God bless her for it. I hope she keeps doing it because she's deserving of what she got. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
Coming up next.
Well, let me tell you how unfortunately divided America has become in so many ways over politics. It's really reached a point which is kind of sad when you think about it, but let me tell you about a story that happened down in Phoenix, Arizona. Happened to a lady, an Arizona native by the name of Susan Rosner. She and her husband were going to an Arizona Cardinals football game to see them, and she happened to be wearing a MAGA hat, one of those red MAGA hats. Going into the stadium, and the ticket taker says, "No, ma'am, you can't bring that in here." And he or she, and I don't know if it was a he or she, forced Miss Rosner to take her hat off and throw it into the trash. Now, obviously, you'd say, well, wait a minute, they're just following a rule probably that says no political stuff or those kind of things. So I decided, well, let me go take a look at the sign policy for the stadium down there in Arizona. And said the only thing that signs can't be larger than 3 feet by 2 feet. Doesn't say anything about politics. No beverage containers, no cameras with professional lenses, no clothing deemed obscene or indecent. Now, I'm not sure if you would consider a hat obscene or indecent, but this ticket taker told Ms. Rosner, "Nope, you can't wear that hat in here." So she had to throw it away. Well, the Cardinals got wind of what was going on and have now profusely apologized to Ms. Rosner and her husband, saying, hey, those are third-party people that we hire through another company, a employment type of situation, to do all the ticket vending and those kind of things, because teams can't do that, let's be honest. And that person misinterpreted the rules. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the rules saying what you can't have, unless you consider her hat obscene or indecent. Now, this is where we are, folks. This is where that now in America we have gotten so polarized that many people are afraid to wear a MAGA hat if that's what they're into, or wear a shirt that says, whatever, put a flag on their vehicle. I know someone that had a flag on the back of their truck, and they were literally afraid to keep it overnight in a certain area for fear of what would happen to their vehicle. This is where we are. Or certain people are afraid to put on bumper stickers on their car for fear their car will be damaged or scratched or, keyed or whatever. And this is how things have gotten, folks. This is not a good sign for America. Frankly, this is a very bad sign. In the Civil War in the 1860s, we had brother against brother, father against son, family against family. Well, have we reached that point again? I hate to say it, but things are starting to steer us that way. So here, this woman down in Arizona, I don't know what the Cardinals have done to try to compensate her for this. Couldn't tell you. But this is the state of affairs that we currently live in America. So if you're afraid of putting on a T-shirt or wearing a hat or putting a sticker on your car, or putting a sign on your lawn, now you understand what's going on. People no longer feel it's safe to proclaim who they're in favor of and whatever. Because now it isn't just, well, we disagree, but we're friends. Now we unfriend. We completely ditch somebody. We expel them from the family. We don't get near them. That's Civil War stuff, folks. Are we going back to that? I certainly hope not. Just my thoughts on it. That's all I got for you. See you.
Coming up next.
You ever wonder why various cities, various towns in the NCAA basketball tournament, the first rounds are in this city, they're in that city. Smaller cities than Fort Wayne get the NCAA regional events, first division or first grouping, second grouping. Saying, why doesn't Fort Wayne get this? Yeah, we do get some sports things, but not very often. But now things are starting to change because the NCAA has just announced that starting in 2027 and 2028, Fort Wayne is going to be hosting the bids for 5 events in the NCAA in the 2027 and 28 seasons. Now, frankly, over the years, as I said, we didn't get some of these things. Yeah, we were trying to get stuff from the NCAA, but hadn't get a lot of big stuff. But now, guess what? 2027, we get the Division One. Got it? Division One Women's Golf Regionals. Now, we've got some great golf courses in this area, and we're going to get regionals. Okay, fine, little something. We'll take what we can get. But starting in 2027, Division II Women's Basketball Championships. Now, Division I's a big sport. Division II, hey, we're getting the runner-up grouping. That's coming in 2027, but even better, also in 2027, the Men's Division II Basketball Championship. This is the kind of stuff they show on national television. We're getting that in 27 and in 28. Women's Basketball Elite 8 and the semifinals. So we're going to have that in Fort Wayne. And Men's Basketball Division II Championship NCAA also in Fort Wayne. We're getting all of that. Now, who's responsible for that? Well, Visit Fort Wayne, the people downtown doing all this stuff. They're putting a lot of time and effort. And frankly, Fort Wayne is beginning to grow. Fort Wayne is beginning to be on the map. People are saying, hey, this is quite a town. We got a lot of stuff here. We got a great Coliseum. We've got great golf courses. We got a lot of stuff. People are starting to say, hey, Fort Wayne's really got some pretty cool stuff. And we're starting to get awarded stuff for that. So now, in case you didn't know, if you were a fan of basketball or golf, guess what? We're starting to get bigger stuff. Yeah, we ain't Division I yet. We ain't getting into, those regional things for the NCAA basketball. But, hey, the championship, men's championship, women's championship, Division II, that's nothing to sneeze at, folks. Nothing at all. It's coming to Fort Wayne starting in 2027 and 2028. Fort Wayne, you've done a good job. My hat's off to Visit Fort Wayne, because you really are coming through.
Coming up next.
Well, there's an old saying, folks, that good things or bad things come in threes. And recently, we had the death of Kristofferson. Second thing, it's a bigger one in my estimation, is the death of Pete Rose. Died at the age of 83. Pete Rose was, he was a hero of many people. And whether you played baseball or didn't, Pete Rose was a one of a kind. He grew up in a hard life and ultimately had a father who was making him play. But he developed an attitude, gotta win, gotta win, gotta win, gotta do the best, just gotta. That was Pete Rose. Yes, he came up and he did things that many other people couldn't do. Beating Ty Cobb, biggest hits. These are things I remember because I used to go down to Cincinnati, not because I was a Cincinnati Reds fan. I wasn't as a Cubs fan. But I had a dear friend, his name was Dale Ludwig. And Dale had a company over on Fern Hill and Wells Street called Advanced Products. Became friends with Dale in my advertising career. And I kind of became almost like a son to him, I guess. We had, my wife and I had 2 daughters, and he and his wife Liz treated our daughters the same way as he treated his own grandchildren. It was just that special. It was like family. But every year, Dale's wife Liz would say, hey, you got to take him to Cincinnati for opening day. And I did. I drove him down to Cincinnati because she said he'd fall asleep in the car, and he probably would. Well, he did. And always went for opening day in Cincinnati every year. But he was a big Cincinnati Reds fan. One of the biggest I've ever seen. He had a whole room next to his pool. A room, Cincinnati Reds stuff. Guy was a diehard Cincinnati Reds fan. He knew I was a Cubs fan, and he chided me a lot. But I always respected the Cincinnati Reds. Big red machine, man. Probably the greatest eight baseball players I think I've ever seen. Pete was one of them. But Pete did something. There's a rule in baseball, Rule 21, I believe it is, says don't bet. You bet, you're going to be banished from baseball. And he broke that rule. And he's been banished from baseball for, since 89? A lot of people saying, you need to put him back in or put him in the Hall of Fame. It's been discussed. He said, hey, Hall of Fame, gee, it'd be great, while you're walking around, you're alive, you can talk about it. He said after he's dead, Hall of Fame don't mean anything. Well, the Hall of Fame is not connected to Major League Baseball. You just have to understand that. It is not part of Major League Baseball. It's a museum unto its own self. It is. Now, could the Hall of Fame say, okay, we're going to nominate Pete? He has been nominated, by the way. I think he got 41 votes out of a few hundred, whatever it was. There's still writers who feel that he shouldn't be in there because he violated the tenet of baseball, Rule 21, like I said. Should he be in the Hall of Fame now that he's posthumous, post-death? That's a toughie. And the reason I say all that is because I remember the steroid era, the Mark McGwire's, Sammy Sosa, the Cubs. Come on. Should those players be in the Hall of Fame? There's the story of Ron Santo, too, which is a whole other story, how badly that was handled. But should Pete Rose be admitted to the Hall of Fame after his demise, after his death? People are going to argue yes. People are going to argue no. I'm torn. Because if we have rules and you break it, that's one thing. But the Hall of Fame is not part of baseball. It's a museum. And that museum honors people who are great in baseball. So, the Hall of Fame decides to admit him. Are they going to have to admit Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, steroid ear people? I don't know. I'm just telling you, it's something that weighs on me a little bit. I'm not a massive baseball fan. I've got friends who are great baseball players, huge fans, and believe me, they know more about this game than I'll ever know. Maybe they're torn, maybe they're not. I'm still having a rough time with it. Are rules made to be broken? Some people say. I don't know. But I do know Rule 21 exists. And regardless of what you say, that is paramount or else you don't have a game. Just saying. Yep, it's still going to be debated. People are going to say, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. And they may be right. But it's just a feeling I have. So I just wanted to tell you what I thought. The passing of Pete Rose was tragic, but something to think about for all of us. Are rules made to be broken? That's all I have for you this time. See ya.
Coming up next.
If you're a baseball fan, this may interest you. Now, if you're not a baseball fan, and I understand baseball is, well, not as popular as it used to be. Now it's the NFL and college football. That seems to be the big sport in America. After all, you got football on almost every night of the week when you think about it. Baseball used to be the best thing going on. You had great announcers, the Vin Scullys, the Jack Bucks, Dizzy Dean, Pee Wee Reese. That goes back a long time. Most of you don't even know who that is. But baseball used to be the game, America's game. Well, one of the biggest things in baseball was the All-Star break. Remember that? Middle of the season, had the best guys of all the teams come together, see who's going to win the National or the American League. Well, when the COVID thing hit, they had to cancel the game. So when they started it up, Nike and a company called Fantastics got together and made a pitch to Major League and said, tell you what, let us design new uniforms for the American and the National League, and let's put them all as new uniforms, new designs, new whatever. It's money. That's what happens. It was basically a money deal. So the game was played, and it used to be the teams, back in the old days, before the COVID hit, everybody wore their own uniform from your team. That way you knew who somebody was. So if you saw the Cincinnati Reds team players, you saw the Chicago Cubs players, you knew who they were. It's their uniforms. Not everybody had the same uniform. Nobody knew who the hell they were. Well, that's what happened. I went on for a couple of years, and finally, America said, we ain't watching this crap. And the ratings went down the sewer. People didn't want to see the All-Star game because they couldn't figure out who was who. So Major League Baseball said, this ain't working out. And what they did was this. They decided to get out of the contract with Nike and Fantastics because the uniforms, even they made up, see-through, bad fitting. I mean, it was terrible. All right, so starting in 25 and going into 26, going to take a couple of years to get through this, the American and the National League players will wear their own uniforms. Now, the only thing is they're going to have hats made, and it's going to be the hats for the particular league and what have you. So they're not be wearing their official caps, the hats, as I understand, but they will be wearing the uniforms. So now, America, if you want to go back and watch the All-Star team, starting in 2025, they're going to be wearing their own uniforms. They're home and away, all right? Not everybody's all wearing a home uniform. One team will be wearing the home, the other will be wearing the away uniforms. That's how it works. So if you've been wondering about that, now there's something you need to know. Baseball has finally got its head out of his butt and said, let's go back to having players wear the uniforms because we know who they are. Money. Sometimes it's the root of all evil. Just thought I'd pass that along to you, and I hope it helps you make a decision.
Coming up next.
How many of you out there have been watching the television networks beginning with the ABC, the NBC, and the CBS? Turns out that more and more people are dropping watching the alphabet networks. Why? Well, they're getting their television now via the internet, which is what you can do. And all these different channels and what have you are now available online. Whether you want to watch PBS or you want to watch something on Yahoo or Peacock or Paramount or whatever, it's now available online, and fewer people are actually watching the television networks. Well, what does that result in? How about people on the networks losing their jobs? Latest one is a lady on NBC for the Morning Today show on NBC. I think her name was Hoda Kotb. I may be mispronouncing that name. If I am, I apologize. She was making $20 million a year for 2 hours a day. $20 million? 2 hours? Well, she has decided that she is going to step down, retire, whatever, because the network wanted to cut her salary. Her ratings have lost 50% in the last 2 years. But it's not just her ratings. It's everybody's ratings. You know, it used to be that you would get 15, 20, 30 million people watching something. Now those numbers are dropped down to 3 million, 2 million, whatever. People aren't watching regular television like they used to. They're now going to everything else, whether it's anything on the internet. And I happen to be one of those myself. If I want to watch television, I sit there and watch interesting programming on places like Yahoo, on Peacock, on Paramount, on whatever channel I choose to watch, because that's the way things are going. So Hoda Kotb is stepping down because, well, they want to cut her salary. Too bad. It's the beginning, folks. It is the beginning. All those big-name network people that you hear about, you see on TV, being paid millions of dollars. You know, George Stephanopoulos, remember him? In the Clinton White House, political guy, went to ABC. No, he's not a journalist. He was making like $18 million. Well, he got in a kerfuffle with David Muir, the news guy, and I don't know what it was about, but Stephanopoulos threatened to quit. So ABC probably raised his salary, paid him more money. These people, folks, are getting ready to be axed. The big money ain't there anymore because the ratings of the TV networks aren't there either. Things are changing. It's happening quickly. Just some of the people. So I'm just telling you right now, the exit of the big names and the big money is starting to happen to the television network. And frankly, I'm pretty pleased with it. Just my thoughts on it. Thought I'd pass that along.
Coming up next.
I'll tell you right now from the beginning, I am not a fan of soap operas. Never have been, and probably never will be. But a little story I want to tell you about that, well, it happened back in the 1980s. I actually happened to meet a soap opera star right here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Back then I was serving and flying in the Air National Guard. I was flying a C-131, which, by the way, is that aircraft right there, the white one. And I had a flight mechanic, Vic rather. And one day he said, why don't you come out to the base and meet my son-in-law? And we all went, okay, fine. So we went out to the base and met this young man named Drake Hogestyn. Donald Drake Hogestyn. He's a young man, and he was a soap opera star. And I believe the soap opera was Days of Our Lives, but I could be wrong, correct me. But he was there with his wife, and I didn't think much about it. soap opera stars. I'm not a fan of soap operas. Hollywood. But he's a very nice guy. Very nice. Turns out he's a Fort Wayne guy. Graduated from high school here in Fort Wayne. Was an athlete. Went down to the University of South Florida, I believe it was, to play baseball on a scholarship. And ultimately wanted to be an oral surgeon. So he graduated with a couple of majors, a couple of degrees, and pretty smart guy. But was drafted by a couple of Major League Baseball teams and played in the minor leagues, I guess it was, for a while, got hurt, and ultimately ended up saying, hey, you know what? He had a chance to go into acting for a number of reasons, got selected, and got involved with the acting business. And that's fine. Became a star, soap opera star. But his wife, turns out, he said when he was 15 years old, he was playing baseball. And saw a 12-year-old girl riding on the handlebars of a bike of her friend, and that was it. Saw this young lady, and he knew that was the one for him. Well, that was in the 1980s, and you always think, well, those Hollywood things, they never last. Well, apparently it did. Well, Drake passed away at the age of 70 with pancreatic cancer, but his wife and family and kids and grandkids and what have you surrounding him. And the reason I say all this is because here's a guy from Fort Wayne, Indiana, who became a TV star, yet the one thing that meant the most to him was family. And as so many people in Hollywood, you hear divorces of 7, 8 times, whatever. This guy was married, lifelong. When he saw the person he loved, he said, that's it. And he kept that promise and stayed married for that long. Doesn't happen a whole lot more in today's world. I don't care who you are, what you are. So if you've been married for 30, 40 years, whatever, stand by that. You've done something pretty good. Not many people do that anymore. Something to be proud of. In his case, apparently we've lost somebody good, but he was a great father and grandfather, maybe great-grandfather, I don't know. But at least he's got something to be proud of in his life because he was an adult and he was a married individual who stayed that way. Just my take on this. I may be totally wrong in a lot of things, but anybody who's married that long deserves credit. That's what I'm saying. And that's all I have for you right now. See ya.
Coming up next.
Well, in case you haven't heard, the great Kristofferson passed away, and at the age of 88, died in his home with his family around him. He was married, third time I believe it was. The wife's name was Lisa. Had 8 kids, but he'd been married before, and a couple of times, frankly. Rita Coolidge was one of them. Kris Kristofferson, people think of as a great singer. Me and Bobby McGee and the Star is Born with Barbra Streisand, that movie he was in. But actually, he was a songwriter. And if you know anything about songs, somebody records a great musical song. They record it. They didn't write it. Now, the writer is the one who gets the residuals. That's where the check goes to. Yeah, the artist gets paid, but the artist got to go on the road and sing the stuff to keep making money, because the money is being made by the writer. Kris Kristofferson was actually a great songwriter. He really was. He penned songs like Good for the Good Times with Ray Price in 1970, Sunday Morning Coming Down, Johnny Cash. He actually landed a helicopter in Johnny Cash's yard and presented him the song. That's how he did that. Help Me Make It Through the Night, Sammy Smith. And, of course, me and Bobby McGee. Great song. He wrote other songs, too. But you have to understand something. Kris Kristofferson was born in Brownsville, Texas in 1936. His father was an Air Force pilot and an airline pilot. Family moved to California. He graduated from Pomona High School, I believe. And anyway, became a Rhodes Scholar. I mean, that's high up the totem pole, folks. Smart guy. Joined the Army and became a helicopter pilot in the Army, and that is no easy feat. Flying an airplane is one thing. Helicopter is a whole different animal, but he did it. Promoted to the rank of captain. When he's coming back from a trip overseas, they wanted to send him to West Point to teach. He said, no, I ain't doing that. Said, I'm going to go to Nashville. And he did. And he had all kinds of jobs and all kinds of little things. He was even a janitor at one time. Just wanted to get in the music business, and he did. Sang songs, but he wrote songs, so that was his big thing. He wrote songs, memorable songs. And of course, everybody knows him in the movies Barbra Streisand and The Star Is Born. He was in many other movies, bit parts, bigger parts. Most of the movies weren't, notable. But the thing that made him great was his ability to write great songs. Then he got tied in with the Highwaymen, with Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and that group, Highwaymen. So he did a lot in his life. 88 years of age. He lived a long and fruitful life. And you can't say anything bad about that. Yes, he was cantankerous. Like I said, he was married 3 times. And but his last one, 8 kids with a wife. Her name was Lisa. Now, he's going to go down in history as one of the great writers. Maybe not one of the great actors or even one of the great singers. But man, could he write some great songs. Kristofferson died at the age of 88. Mother Nature came and called him home. Will he be singing up there in the heavens? One can only guess. But we do know this. He was a classic in our time. Kristofferson, dead at the age of 88. And he will be missed. That's all I have for you. See ya.
Coming up next.
Let me ask you a question. Do you ever consider yourself to be wealthy? I mean, we all think about it one time or another. Gee, am I wealthy? Am I middle class? Am I lower class? Who knows? Well, apparently, according to Money People magazine, they have come out with a set of statistics, if you will, where they determine what amount of money you have to have in your salary to be considered wealthy. Now, it varies around the United States because the average median income in the U.S. is around $59,039. Now, the U.S. only makes up about 4% of the world's population, but believe it or not, the U.S., we've got 25% of the billionaires. I ain't one of them, and you probably aren't either. But are you wealthy based on the numbers that they have crunched? Now, they went through 40 American cities. And Fort Wayne didn't make it, but other cities around us did. So I want to give you a compendium of those cities where they considered wealthy and then kind of averaged out and say, okay, where does that put us? So the first place I went and looked at was Detroit. And the median income there is about $56,000 a year, but the wealthy index is $112,200 a year salary. So if you and your wife together are making that, well, you're considered wealthy. Now, that's Detroit. Down in Indianapolis, the median income is $56,750 a year. And to be wealthy, down in Indy, it's $113,500. Well, that's close to us, 100 and some miles. Now, Columbus, average income, median income, $60,000 in Columbus. And to be wealthy there, you got to be earning $120,000 a year. And, of course, if you go on to Chicago, well, Chicago's a different city, but hey, I got to put them in there somewhere. Their average income, believe it or not, is $66,825. If you want to be wealthy in Chicago, you have to be earning $119,065. All right, so if you average all of those out and put them together and say, okay, where's Fort Wayne in this? Turns out in Fort Wayne, the average income around $59,000, somewhere, 57, $59,000. But to be considered wealthy in Fort Wayne, you have to earn $119,650. $119,650. If you fall into that with a combined income of either your salary or your salary and your wife's together, you're in the upper income, you are considered wealthy. Now, do you consider yourself wealthy? Well, based on everything else, I don't know. I don't think I am in any stretch of the imagination because I'm retired and I live on what I live on. But it's something for you to consider the next time that someone says, hey, are you wealthy, or you're middle class, or you're upper class, or whatever. Just keep in mind, the stat says to be considered wealthy in Fort Wayne, Indiana, you have to be earning around $119,000 a year, or $120,000 if you want to round that off. That would make you considered to be wealthy. And in today's world, with the economy being the way it is, and inflation and everything else we're having to pay for, the cost of gasoline, you name it, I question that a little bit. But you know what? The numbers are what the numbers are. And that's the information from Money People magazine. That magazine I wouldn't buy, first I don't care about. But interesting numbers to push around. That's all I've got for you. Now you know something maybe you didn't know, and whether you're wealthy or not. Pass that around to your friends. That's all I've got for you right now. See ya.
Well, that does it for today's edition of the Pat White Show. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to follow us on social media for the latest Pat White Show for all the news and updates. And stay tuned for brand new episodes of the Pat White Show coming real soon. Like what you're hearing? Make sure you don't miss an episode by following the Pat White Show on Spotify. Just search for the Pat White Show, hit follow, and get ready for insightful conversations delivered straight to your Spotify feed. If you enjoy watching podcasts as much as listening to them, good news! The Pat White Show is also on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel now for visual content, behind-the-scenes footage, and full podcast experience. Find us on YouTube at the Pat White Show channel.
Well, aside from the fact that it is now fall is approaching, guess what else we're into? Another season. It's called the strike season. That's exactly what's happening. Looks like some of the big industries are going on strike. The biggest one, obviously, is the Boeing industry. People make the planes, make the ones with the doors that fall off, the spacecraft that can't bring anybody back in. Yeah, that's the company. Well, the machinists have gone on strike saying, hey, the deal Boeing is offering 25% rate increase for the machinist. And the employees said, no, I ain't taking it. They said, we want 40% and we want all the pension returned. Whatever those happen to be, that's what they want. So they are striking, and it isn't just affecting the Boeing company. It affects all the other properties, all the other companies that provide services and goods to Boeing. You know, they don't make everything on the airplane. They bring, it's just in time. They get this from this company, this from another company. And this is going to put Boeing in a stop position, especially when they're working on a brand new aircraft getting ready to replace the 757. And I think it's called the 797, if memory serves me right. So Boeing is one on strike right now, but also some of the airlines are on strike. Flight attendants for one of the major airlines, they're going on strike also, saying, hey, you're giving us a 20% raise, but ain't enough. Now, why is everybody striking? Well, it's simple enough. When the inflation went up 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and the money, your money, started to become worth less, the people in the airline industry, the flight attendants, the Boeing folks, they said, hey, wait a minute. Our money is even worth less now than 4 years ago. They want it made up. This is just the tip of the iceberg. More of this is going to be coming down the pipe as more and more organizations, unions, and companies, they're going to say, hey, they're striking over there. We're going to strike too because we want to get made up for what happened because of the inflation. Now everybody said, well, the Fed is going to lower the interest rate. Yeah, they may. Quarter point. I mean, they could do it a half point. Don't know what they're going to do, but whatever they decide to do, it's not going to make up for the loss of the value of the dollar. That has occurred. That's why everything is skyrocketed up in inflation, because the dollar is worth less. That's the problem, folks. That debt reduction act that Kamala Harris signed as the tiebreaker put $2.5 trillion into the money, into the place where we don't need any more money. I mean, your dollar's worth less. Something you need to know about economics, how it works. More strikes are coming, folks. Just get ready. Boeing, the airlines, the tip of the iceberg. More is coming. That's all I got for you right now. Stay tuned, because more is going to happen. That's it for now. See ya.